A close distance. Mrs. Grace Edosa was sitting comfortably in her corner on her old sofa, a cup of tea on a stool beside her and the TV remote control in hand. It was a quiet evening, and she was set to enjoy her favorite program, Super Story. Since her twin daughters have finished university and have left home to serve their nation in various parts of the country, the house has sometimes become too quiet for her comfort, but she loves the television and her cup of tea, the few things that kept her going. Mrs. Edosa never made many friends. Born and raised in Abudu, a little town in Edo, West, she had moved to Benin City, the capital of Edo State, when she had her twins and had rarely visited home as there was no one there so important that it was worth her frequent visit. She had lost her parents many years ago, and the incident that led to their death was still very raw in her memory. Her only sibling, Johnson Edosa, had stolen their family house documents and sold the house and then disappeared into thin air and had not been seen or heard of for 26 years. She and her parents were booted out of the property, and they had to rent to have a place to lay their heads. Her old man could not bear the pain. He was a retiree and would not be able to build another. All his labor in his heydays went down the drain. He was sad. He fell sick and died. Her mother was heartbroken, and 6 months after the death of her husband, she, too, joined the ancestors. Grace was alone. Although she was not a child then, she was 30, but the manner in which the ugly incidents happened, from losing their house to the death of her parents in the space of 9 months, was some pain she has never been able to overcome. Only the children give her joy, and now they are grown-ups, she was again alone, almost all the time. She never finds it in her heart to forgive her brother, Johnson, and she doesn't care whether he is still alive or dead. She wished he was never born. She took a glance at the picture of her girls hanging on the wall. They looked good in the youth copper uniform. She was proud of herself and of the girls whom she had single-handedly raised. She was happy they came out excellent and successful. They have both studied law, and with the look of things, it was clear they will be doing well in their chosen career. She was a happy mother despite all the pains she'd been through. She was waiting for them to get married, give her grandchildren and expand the family. Her joy was going to spill over the day that would happen. She was eagerly waiting. The program began, another exciting episode, and she was engrossed, following the details, enjoying every moment of it and smiling to herself like there was no problem in the world. Then she heard her doorbell ring. She diverted her attention to the door. Who could that be? She asked herself as she felt reluctant to go to the door. The bell rang again and again. "Who is that?" she asked. "Wait, I am coming." She stood up and walked fast to the door. She wanted to go there, disperse whoever was there quickly, and return to her program. She opened the door, and a woman was there. "Good evening," the woman greeted. "Good evening," Grace greeted, too. "How may I help you, please?" She was polite. "My name is Ekin, and I am very sorry to disturb you this evening," she said softly. "May I come in, please? I have something very important to discuss with you." Looking deep into the woman's face, although she was speaking softly, Mrs. Grace Edosa could see something she was struggling to understand. She seemed worried and scared, and Mrs. Edosa was afraid she wasn't a bearer of good news. "Am I safe?" Mrs. Edosa asked. "Absolutely, madam," said the lady. "But I don't know you. How easy will that be for you to open your door to a total stranger and let her into your house?" Mrs. Edosa complained. Ekin took a deep breath and composed herself. "I know, madam, it is difficult, but believe me, I am harmless and wouldn't be here if it is unimportant." Although Grace was wary of her, she moved out of the way and let her in. Why, inside, the stranger did not tardy on her mission. She went straight to the point without beating around the bush, as she had rehearsed the situation for a very long time. Mrs. Grace Edosa was not taking her visit lightly. Her message was killing her. She was instantly suffocating and finding it hard to breathe. It appears she has been hit by a train and her world was shattering before her in a flash. The life she had kept secret for over 2 decades was about to be blown out of the water. "Can you expect to be treated like this?" she finally managed to ask. "I am sorry, madam. I didn't intend to hurt you or anyone with my visit," said Ekin politely. "Then what is your intention? How can you say you didn't intend to hurt me when you walked into my house with such news?" Grace yelled, "How can I even believe you are telling the truth? Where have you been all these years?" Eakin was calm. "I am sorry," she repeated. "My story is long. I don't want to hear any of it. Please leave my house now." Eakin looked at Grace with pity. She sighed but rose to her feet. She quite expected that reaction, but she wasn't going to back down now. "I know how you feel, madam. I have felt worse over the years, yes, I have, but we have to do this, we have to find a way. Like I said, I am not here to cause trouble. Things can remain the way they are, but..." "There is no but," Grace groans. "Just leave my house and never come back here again," she says, even though she never believes herself that the strange woman will take that advice. She is scared. Eakin left, but Grace was left devastated. She didn't know how to handle the news the strange woman had just brought to her. She collapsed on her sofa and burst into tears. There was no one else she could talk to, no one else that understood the situation. She was alone in her secret life. She cursed whatever made her open the door for Eakin, the strange woman. She looked beautiful and was dressed beautifully, but deep down, she was an angel of bad news, a bad omen. She wishes her death before she gets to her destination so that the secret will go to the grave with her. Her evenings were troubled, her nights were marred with nightmares, her days were restless, and she persistently offered prayers to God for Eakin not to come back, but her. Eakin returned 3 days later. This time, Grace refused to open the door. Eakin remained at the door for over half an hour, talking politely to Grace from outside. "We have to do this, madam. No one says it will be easy, but I am here now and will not go away. Soon, people will ask questions about a woman who comes to your door every day you never open the door for. You don't want that attention, do you? Because you know what that will bring." Hearing the strange woman's ultimate truth, Grace anxiously pulled the door open. "What do you want from me? Could you please leave me alone? I beg of you, in the name of God, leave me alone." She slammed the door in her face and returned inside, but Eakin was satisfied with that day. She walked away. 2 days later, Eakin was back at Grace's door again. "I have heard what you said," Grace snapped. "I am thinking about it. Would you allow me to do that, please?" She still didn't let her in. "Of course. You have to think about it. Why wouldn't I allow that?" Eakin was smiling. But Grace wasn't buying into her sweet smile. "So goodbye," she slammed the door again. "Goodbye and thank you for thinking about it." But Eakin was talking to the door as Grace had gone back inside, crying. About 5 minutes after Eakin departed her door, Grace's bell rang again. She stood up and refused to wipe the tears in her eyes. She was ready to pounce on her this time. "What on earth is your problem, shameless woman?" She opened the door with all her strength, but instead of Eakin standing there, she saw a ghost from her past. She stepped backwards with a look of horror in her eyes. Her mouth was opened, but she was unable to speak. "Are you having a problem with anyone?" asked the ghost from the past. "No, not another one, not you, no. You are dead. Please go back to wherever you came from, please." She tried to close the door, but her only brother, her ghost from the past, blocked the door with his body and prevented her from closing it. "I know you will like me dead, and I don't blame you after all that I put the family through, but I am not dead. I am here, flesh and blood, your only sibling. Please let me talk to you, then I can be on my way if you don't want me to stay. You know I wouldn't want you to stay, and I will not listen to you unless I see Daddy and Mum behind you. Can you bring them back?" "I can't, I am sorry. I have never been able to forgive myself. I think Nemesis has caught up with me, so, please, my sister, let's make up before I join our parents, too." Grace looked at him with curiosity. "Yes, it won't be long before I join them." "What do you mean?" asked Grace. "I am sick and have few months to live," he said. "Ha ha ha," Grace laughed. "If this is another prank to have me allow you into my life, it won't work. Go back. I have enough on my plate already." Johnson dipped his hand into his little bag and brought out a medical report prepared in Kirikiri prison in Lagos. "Take, go through it and keep it if you like. You are the only one that matters to me, and that is why I have come." He turned back and began to walk away. "But I never knew our parents were dead all these years," he said over his shoulder, then stopped and turned to her again. "I just discovered that upon my arrival. I have cried, but I am comforted with the fact I am meeting them soon so I can plead properly for their mercies and forgiveness." He turned around and started walking. He was gaunt and emaciated, but his face remained the same, the reason she was able to recognize him straight away after nearly 3 decades. She had spent all her life hating him, but he was her only sibling, and he was dying. The news of death is such that it can melt the heart to stone, and as she stood there on the threshold of her door, all the hatred she had harbored for his only brother washed away in a flash. She was not ready to let him die lonely because, from the look of things, he had no one else as it appeared he had been in prison. "Johnson," she cried. "Please come back." She met him halfway and embraced him. "Why?" She wept on his shoulder. "Why did things turn out this way? I'm sorry. I was young and naive. I wish I knew then what I know now." When he said, Grace was touched. "Come inside," she said. "This report is a lie. I just found you, and you will not die." "I wish so, but it's all right. I have caused much pain to my family." "Stop that now. I have forgiven you, and I think Mum and Dad have, too. Let's put the past behind us." Johnson saw the setting of her sister's house and was struck by curiosity and ambivalence. Could it be, and could it not be? Grace saw the look in him but was not ready to delve into that with him yet. He had been away for 26 years, and she demanded some explanation. It happened that Johnson sold his father's house because someone had promised to help him to America, where he was supposed to make some quick and good dollars, come back home and replace his father's building with a far better one. But in Lagos, he was duped. When all the money was taken from him, he felt he was better off dead than returning home. He was in Lagos, homeless and jobless. He joined the area gang to survive. He began to drink and do drugs. One day, after he was so high on drugs, he met Bode Williams, the man who dubbed him of all his money, in a bar, drinking and enjoying himself with some pretty girls. Johnson was incensed. There was a man who had completely ruined his hope in life, enjoying the money he had probably taken from him by deceit. Why he, the owner of the money, was in the street, homeless, jobless and hungry? He approached Bode Williams. There were hot exchanges of bad words, and before the word jacked was used, a big fight ensued between them. In the hit of that moment, Johnson broke a bottle and stabbed Bode Williams on his neck. He fell and bled to death. Johnson was arrested, charged, and tried in court and was given a 40-year jail sentence but was released after 26 years because of ill health. "But why didn't you call or write home?" Grace lamented. "After all that I have done, I didn't want to because I didn't know how to explain that. I was better off forgotten," he said. "We were outraged, but Daddy and Mum prayed for you on their deathbed. They wished you would be okay wherever you are. How could they find it in their hearts to forgive me when they knew I was the one killing them?" Johnson faced the floor, regretting. "Well, that is the love of parents. You will never know until you have your own family." Grace smiled and went into the kitchen, preventing him from asking what was apparently on his mind. But that night, they talked. He'd asked the question, and his sister told him everything. He also told him about the strange woman Eakin's visit. Johnson was sorry. The situation was harsh. There was an imminent rain no one could prevent from falling, but he was glad he was there. He would be helping his sister and his nieces through the ordeal until colon cancer set his son. Please subscribe to our channel, like and share, and stay tuned for part 2. Thanks for watching.
A Close Distance, Part 2. The following day, Grace wanted to discuss Johnson's situation in detail and how he was going to start treatment, but he had refused. He was going to die anyway and didn't want to be used as a guinea pig by any doctor or hospital authority. Instead, he insisted they talk about her own plight, about the strange woman and her message that was causing her restlessness. "You will have to open up," he tells her. "Really? Just like that?" "Oh yes," he said. "The strange woman will keep coming. She is determined, and nothing can stop her unless you want your neighbors to announce you." "I wouldn't want that," said Mrs. Edosa. "Then come to compromise. She had said things would remain the same. To me, that's a good sign that she is not in for trouble. After much deliberation with her brother, Mrs. Grace Edosa reluctantly agrees to do the right thing. The biggest secret of her life was about to be revealed. "You have taken the right decision," Johnson commended. "It's good that I am here now. We will sail this storm together if only we start soon, because I will not be here for too long." "You are not going anywhere." "Be positive," said Grace. He smiled and stood up to his feet. "I want to visit home, Abudu." "But you just came from there. You told me our uncle, Asolo, gave you my address, so what are you returning there for?" "You were the only person on my mind, so I didn't check on anybody, old friends and extended families and some past regular places. I need to see them again to make peace with myself." "You came back to torture me, Johnson. How can I live with this? It is better than thinking I just disappeared into thin air. I feel this way you will have more closure. Don't tell me you have not wondered what might have happened to me over the years," said Johnson. "I have, uncountable times," Mrs. Edosa replied. "This is why I have come, because I never stopped thinking of you and our parents. But you never tried to contact us." "I would have, but who do I send to Abudu from Lagos prison?" "I would have written, but to which address when I knew you were no longer in the home, which only address I knew? In one way or the other, I tried to punish myself for my sins. This is one reason I am not so sad about my illness. I take it as my penance, and after 25 years inside, nothing out here interests me anymore, so I am looking forward to that day. Please don't cry for me." As Johnson stepped out of the house, Grace's doorbell rang again. She thought he had forgotten something, so she rushed to the door, but it was the strange woman, Ekan, who had come back. "Please don't lock me out. I am a peaceful somebody who would not like to destroy all you have built. I have promised you nothing will ever change. If you don't want to destroy everything I have built, you wouldn't have come." Ekan smiled. "There is one more surprise." "One more surprise? What are you trying to pull out again?" "Do not get yourself worked up, it is a sweet surprise. It seems we are traveling a long distance now, but it is close," she said, smiling beautifully. Grace tried to find more fault in the woman, but she couldn't find anything apart from her sudden appearance in her life. Ekan was beautiful and well-dressed, and her skin was glowing. She looked well-kept and civilized because the strange woman kept her calm through all of her tantrums. She appeared well-to-do, too. Mrs. Edosa glided to one side, let her in, and then asked, "Where have you been all these years?" "Italy. I have been living in Italy for the past 20 years. "I see. So, you have come to spray your money and shatter my life? Your life will be far better than this by the time we are done, believe me." Grace grunted. "You said something by the door that it seems we are traveling a long distance, but actually close. What do you mean by that?" "It is part of the surprise package that awaits you and everyone. I will keep hold of it until we get there." "Get where?" asked Grace. "You understand me clearly." Grace again grunted in capitulation. "I have heard all that you said. I have discussed it with my brother, and we have come to the same conclusion as you. Leave your number, and I will call you when we are ready." "Okay, but did I hear you say, your brother?" "Yes, my only brother." "Johnson, you mean?" "Yes, Johnson." "Did you know him?" Grace was curious. Ekan chuckled in pain and extreme anger but found the courage to conceal it. "Do you know my brother?" Grace asked again. "Yes, I know him," Ekan said slowly after exhaling a few times to compose herself. "It will interest you to know, madam, that I am from Abudu, born and bred in that town, and I know you very well, the reason I did what I did." "You are getting me confused now," said Grace. "Anyway, thanks for arriving at your good decision. I will be going now." She gave Grace her number. "Please call me and don't let it be too long. I am not based here. I will have to return to my life in Europe." Grace took the number from her. She stared at Ekan with a blank expression. The strange woman just got a stranger. Judith and Juliet were happy to be coming home to meet their uncle for the first time. Though they had heard so much about him wrongly, they really wanted to meet him. He was their mother's only brother, and although Grace has reiterated how much she hates him, but they know that deep down, she had thought of him always and had wondered what must have happened to her only sibling. She had told them she wished Johnson hadn't taken the path he took. She would have loved to sit with her brother and talk about old times, especially when they were young. They had a good childhood together, and even when her children were home with her, she often claimed to be lonely. She was living through life with her parents and siblings, and one can tell she had missed the feelings of close relatives. When they received the call from their mother that Uncle Johnson had come, they were full of joy, particularly for their mother, and they couldn't wait to see that happiness in her eyes. When Judith and Juliet got home, they fell into the arms of their Uncle Johnson. They were highly elated. Grace made it a little feast, and they had fun, but their happiness was short-lived when they were informed that their uncle was sick. "This is not fair," Judith cried. She has been the most emotional person in the family. "Life is not fair, dear," said Johnson. "But it is my punishment, and I have accepted it." That night, they concluded that they had to fight the cancer. Johnson could not just give in like that. They never accepted that it was his punishment and that he didn't have to take it. It will be a challenging and expensive one. They were not rich, and Johnson had no money to contribute towards his treatment. Perhaps that was why he had accepted it and was unwilling to fight it, they thought, but they would have to try any means to help him. He must not appear in their lives and disappear again in a flash. He will stay as long as they can fight the illness. That night, the girls slept worried about their uncle, but unknowingly to them, a big shocker of their own awaits them. One glorious morning, the girls had been home for 2 days, and their mother called them to the living room for some talks. Johnson was there, sitting by his sister, who had been struggling with her decision since the very day she made it, and it had become harder for her since the girls came around. Judith and Juliet settled down on the opposite sofa with trepidation. They knew it wouldn't be good news, seeing the look of weariness on their mother's face. "Girls, I am glad you are here," said Johnson. "Very glad to be seeing you for the first time. I wish this had happened earlier. However the case may be, I still thank God for making me know you. I know since you came home, you have been so worried about my health situation, but there is something else we have to tell you." He stopped and looked at his sister to see how she was doing, and she was not doing well, but they were at the point where they cannot stop, or the girls will be worried to death. "Your mother has something significant to discuss with you. It might be life-shattering, but I think we are going to be fine in the end." The girls were scared. They hoped their mother was not sick, too. "Life-shattering?" asked Judith, worried. "Please talk to us, Mum. Are you all right?" Juliet asked, equally worried like her twin sister. Johnson looked at his sister with the expression of "go on with it." Grace adjusted herself and sat up properly by leaning forward. She cleared her throat. "I have brought you up well," she trembled. "I have done my best for you as a mother and have given you my best, and one of them is education, which I know will see you through life. When I look at you today, I feel very proud that my little girls of yesterday are now graduates and serving our nation in your capacity. I think I have done well." She was looking at the girls as she spoke and saw anxiety in their eyes. She didn't know how to break the news to them. She was scared. "I have loved you from the day you came into this world, and I hope things remain the same after today because I never want it any other way," she sighed deeply. "What are you trying to say, Mum?" "Please say it, the delay tactics are killing me," Juliet said. "Me too," added Judith. "It is not easy. My daughters and I don't know how to say it, but I have to say it anyway because I wouldn't want you to hear it from another source." She stopped and wiped some tears from her eyes. Judith and Juliet's worries escalated. They left their sofa and went to their mother, one squatting in front of her and the other bending over her. "What is it, Mum? Are you all right, Mum?" they asked randomly. "I am all right, girls, but not all right." Johnson patted her on her back. "You will be all right, sister. Take your time." "I don't like this anymore," Juliet complained. "Please talk to us." "You know how I feel about you girls," their mother continued. "I love you so much. I am your mother, but the fact is I am not the vessel through which you came into this world." She began to cry. At first, the girls looked at her blankly. "What do you mean?" "I don't understand," said Judith. "I am not your biological mother," she said through her whimpering voice. "Is this a kind of joke?" asked Juliet. "I don't know you to be taking alcohol, Mum." "Girls, I am not drunk. Sit down and let me tell you a story." She was getting bold now since the cat had been let out of the bag. There was no going back. "This may shock you, and you may be disappointed, but the time has come because your real mother has been knocking on my door." "Real mother? Who is that?" "I don't know another real mother but you," said Judith, and Juliet agreed. "I am still your mother, but as I said, you didn't come out directly from my womb." "I don't think I want to hear this, Mum," Juliet said, blocking her ears with her hands. "You will have to, my daughter, and it will depend on you if things remain the same because, as for me, I will love you no less." "Please, girls, listen to your mother," Johnson pleaded. They sat back on their sofa, anxious. "I am barren," Grace started her story. "Numerous doctors confirmed that after 5 years of marriage without being able to conceive. My in-laws called me a witch, and my marriage broke. I was only 30, having got married at 25. I love my husband. The separation hurt. Since I am barren, I never intended to go into any marriage again. I have to avoid the same ordeal repeating itself. I relocated to my parents' house and lived with them again. But Johnson sold the house and we must go into renting. We were living in an uncompleted building almost on the outskirts of town. The closest building to ours was about 300 meters away. When my parents died, Johnson was nowhere to be found. I found myself alone, with no siblings, no parents, husband or children. It was a scary life, she said, shaking her head and smiling. Johnson felt bad. "I am sorry," he apologized wholeheartedly. "It's okay, that's in the past now," she said and then continued. To cut the story short, one morning, about 4 a.m., I heard a loud banging on my door. Tentatively, I went to the door, I opened it, and there was no one there, but on the floor was an oblong basket, and when I beamed my touchlight on it, what I saw shocked me to my bones. The both of you were sleeping like angels." The girls grimaced, tears running down their faces. "If this is true, she never wanted us," said Judith. "Why is she coming back now? I don't even want to set my eyes on her, or I will tear her to pieces," said Juliet, obviously very angry. "No, you will have to give her a chance, let her explain herself," said their mother. "You were beautiful, and I didn't think twice before I took you in. I knew your mother had dropped you for me. Perhaps she could not take care of you, but I waited a week, hoping she would return, but she didn't. In the end, to have both of you to myself as my babies since your real mother has failed to show up and to prevent people from thinking that I have stolen some babies, I had to leave Abudu. I came down to Benin to start life with you. I was happy with you. You were like God sent, and I have always thanked your mother. There I was, a barren woman finally having a beautiful set of twins. I was on top of the world. You were like a miracle. No member of my extended family knew that I was not your biological mother because they never knew my situation and that I was barren. They didn't see me with you in Abudu. Thank God my house was somehow isolated so I could hide you inside for 1 week without anybody being aware. It will be 3 years before I take you home for the first time. I lied that your father had disappeared on me. That is the summary of a 25-year story," she concluded. "I can't believe this, Mum," Juliet nagged. "Believe me, dear. I wouldn't joke with something like this, not when it concerns your lives." "All that she had said is the truth," Johnson chipped in. "When I first came in, I saw your pictures and asked questions because I knew her condition. I was not surprised when she answered my questions correctly. Now, we will pull through this together. I am glad I am here. I will do whatever you ask of me to ease the pains and disappointments." "Ha ha 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 ha," Judith giggled, her eyes wet with tears. "Now, where is that woman who threw us away? I want to see her and give her peace of mind." "She didn't throw you away," said Grace calmly. She dressed you warmly, and in a beautiful basket, she had dropped you for me. She didn't just leave you there, she banged on my door to let me know you were there. I am sure she must have been around watching when I picked you up, otherwise, she wouldn't have left. We still owe her some gratitude because an irresponsible girl would have done it otherwise, you know what I mean. What does she want now? Asked Juliet. Just to know you, that is all she wants now, said Grace. She promised me nothing would change, but... But what, Mum? Juliet interjected, I don't want to see her, let alone change anything. You are the only mother we know, and it stays that way. I can't call another person mother. Me too, said Judith. She can't just walk in from God knows where and then things will change. You are my mother, she said to Grace. And as for her, she means nothing to me. There was anger, tears, heartbreak, and disappointment. There were lots of talk all day and night, but in the end, Grace and Johnson did an excellent job of placating the girls, and 3 days later, they were ready to meet with their biological mother. Ekin approached Grace's door sluggishly. The Day of Atonement was upon her, and fear had suddenly gripped her. She placed her finger on the doorbell but could not press it for a ring. Grace had seen her through the window, and they were waiting, but when the bell was not sounding, she stood up and walked to the realization that the strange woman must be scared to death. She yanked the door open, and she saw Ekin crying. With her was a young girl who looked so much like her. Are you all right? Asked Grace. Ekin shook her head. I am not. I am scared. You shouldn't be. No one is going to eat you in my house. How are the girls? How are they feeling? They are doing great and eager to meet you. Emotions were raw at first, but my brother and I have done very good work with the situation, and right now, they are just doing fine. Your brother, Johnson, is in there, her face turned stern. Yes, he is inside and has been so helpful. I am glad he is around. He should have stayed dead. Anger took over her. Why? Grace was shocked. I will tell you in a minute. All right. But are you going to come in or you want to run back? This is the moment you have waited for over the years, don't let it slip by. Grace moved out of the way. Who is the girl? My daughter, Ekin replied. Really? Asked Grace again. Yes. Okay. Come in. Everyone is waiting, said Grace. Ekin stepped in like she was walking on a glass floor, which she was afraid not to break. In the living room were two beautiful eyes of adult girls staring at her without saying a word. She burst into tears. She couldn't open her arms for them to rush in because she knew they wouldn't. You are all grown up and so beautiful, she said through tears. But the girls seemed not to have been moved, not by her tears or the fact that she was their long-lost mother. She was beautiful, well-dressed, and looking so young, a woman they should have been proud of if not for the circumstances under which they had met. They wondered who the little girl who looked like her was. Could he be their sister? They were interested in her more than they were in their biological mother. Ekin stood in the middle of the living room, looking at her children and crying. She saw the man sitting there but gave him no attention, but Johnson was becoming uncomfortable in his seat. He knew exactly who he was seeing standing before him, Bridget, his former girlfriend of so many years ago. Are you just going to stand there crying? Sit down and tell us what you want. Juliet was getting rude, but Grace was not happy with her, so she calmed down. She wiped her face clean of the tears and appeared bold. Then she walked up to Johnson in his sitting position and quickly gave him some heavy slaps, but the girls and their mother stepped in. What is it with you and my brother? Grace was curious. He is a devil. He caused all of this. He should have been dead. Things would have been better that way. I wouldn't have made this move if I had known he was still alive. What are you on about? Asked Johnson. Oh, you don't know? Ekin asked, seriously fuming. Every other person in the room was held in anxiety, the post was shifting. Tell me you don't know or remember how you deceived me that you were going to take me to America, got me pregnant and never came back. Are you still angry over that? That was 25 years ago. Said Johnson. Those years have lived with me, They never died because something came out of it. She looked at Judith and Juliet, returned to Johnson and said, "These are your children. I never killed them as you may have wanted." There was an uproar in the room. The girls were running mad, but Grace held them together and to herself. Their eyes were bewildered. The shock was almost killing them. The story was getting twisted, and they were frightened. "You mean you didn't have an abortion then?" asked Johnson. "No, I never." Looking at the girls now, I wouldn't say I was stupid not to, but I was naive and stupid because I was hoping to be seriously attached to you with a child, but you never looked back. Shame on you, she kicked him. When they could all relieve themselves of their shocks, Ekin began her story. She tried to make it short. "We were madly in love, and when he told me he was going to America, I was afraid he would never come for me. I was scared he would marry a white woman and forget about me, although he promised he would come for me after a few months. But I got pregnant, and I was happy. I thought with that, it was definite he would come for me. Me and my baby were going to live in America, but he opted for abortion, and I was devastated. I fell seriously sick after that. I spent the money he gave to me on drugs. In the end, I was broke and couldn't afford the abortion cost. Johnson was gone then, and my parents would watch me live with my mistake. But before then, I had known Grace's story, what she had passed through in her marriage, and why it didn't work. I pitied her. When I discovered I was with twins, it was like the end of the world for me. I was poor, and my parents were not prepared to support me. I thought of what to do for months, and Grace came to mind. When I delivered, I had to drop you girls for her. I watched her pick you in, and my mind was at peace. I couldn't stay in Abudu anymore. I was ashamed and left for Ibadan. I was there for a few years in the street, and I fell into the hands of some syndicates that deal with human trafficking. They took me to Italy, and I was mistreated for 5 years. I was more like a prisoner all those years. I was pimped. It was a shame. When I gained my freedom, I faced the hassles of fighting for my rights and documents to stay in Italy. A child came along, and the struggle took a different turn. It was not easy, but I thank God, today, we are all right. I had to arrange myself before coming home. I didn't want to come to you empty-handed after leaving you all these years with nothing. I am sorry. Please find it in your hearts to forgive me. You told me we were traveling a close distance. Is this what you meant? Asked Grace. Yes, Ekin smiled. I can't thank you enough for your excellent work. Greet her, she is your mother, Grace urged the girls. It wasn't her fault, but she did well to have dropped you for me. She didn't destroy you. Everything still falls in place. You are my blood, my children. Grace was happy now. She was smiling. They moved towards her but embraced the 12-year-old Antonia for a long time before embracing their mother. They turned to Johnson, tears were rolling down his face. When he thought he had nothing to live for, 2 grown, beautiful girls who were well educated were his flesh and blood, his children. He didn't know what to make of it, but he managed to stand and apologized fervently to them, especially Ekin. I was young and desperate, please forgive me, he pleaded. It was one of those moments in his life where he didn't know what to say or do. He was there trying to help his sister through the ordeal, not knowing he was deeply involved in the bittersweet saga. Everybody was tired, confused and speechless. The room was silent, and nobody knew what to say anymore. The groundbreaking discovery was too much to take in for one day. To meet their biological parents on the same day and in that manner was so overwhelming and emotional for the girls. It was like a dream, and it took days before they were able to snap out of it, but they still saw Johnson as their uncle and Ekin as another woman. That was a gap that will take a long time to bridge. Everyone knew that, and they will have to give them the needed time for the discovery to sink in. Ekin came home with a big plan for her children and Grace, who had done so well for them. She bought a 4-bedroom bungalow in the heart of Benin City for Judith, Juliet, and their mother, Grace. They had to leave their ramshackle flat to live in the new, ultra-modern house. Grace pleaded for them to live together in the big house as a family, but Ekin chose to live a short distance away. She didn't want to change things, but they became a big, loving family. Antonia and the girls clicked and bonded. Ekin was the happiest person on earth, but Johnson was still sick. Ekin, a woman he knew as Bridget who changed her name due to what she had been through under that name, was a big financial help towards his treatment. Despite all the excellent treatment given to Johnson, 3 years after the significant discovery, he lost the battle with colon cancer and passed on. He was buried in the 3rd cemetery. The family forged ahead in good spirits. Judith and Juliet had good jobs, got married, and had children, but tragedy struck again 15 years after the death of Johnson. Ekin was diagnosed with leukemia. She fought hard, but the cancer fought harder. She was in pain but glad that her children were united. Antonia, whose father has disappeared in Europe, will not be alone, and 15 years after she reunited with her children, 11 years after the death of Johnson, and 3 weeks after Antonia's 27th birthday, Ekin joined the ancestors. As Juliet and Judith had wanted, Ekin was buried in the 3rd cemetery beside their father, Johnson. They were glad for the few years they had known their biological parents. The end.